Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. My sheep listen to my voice, says the Lord. I know them, and they follow me. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. On the Sabbath, Jesus went through the grain fields. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." Jesus said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which it was not lawful for him or his companions to eat, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and yet are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." The Gospel of the Lord. Many years ago, when I was a little bit younger, let's say maybe 20 years ago, I studied something called organic chemistry. And so organic chemistry is really the study of and the design of small molecules, how to use kind of basic building blocks to build molecules. And essentially, you've got, usually we use it for the design of new drugs, for example, or for things that like medications and whatnot. So the pharmaceutical industry. And the big thing with studying organic chemistry is something we call the study of mechanisms, like how things kind of form together and stuff like that. And there are kind of two ways that as students you could go about it. You can either memorize everything, just memorize all the kind of different kinds of reactions and everything, and there'd be a lot to memorize. Or you can go the other way and kind of know the basic principle, the general principle of how these mechanisms work. And then from there, you would be able to solve the various problems. So either you memorized everything or you kind of knew the general principle. So, many, what they do is they try to just memorize everything because that's kind of the easiest way to do it. But sooner or later it gets really, really, really complicated. When you try to memorize everything, it's really impossible. And so as you advance, you have to start kind of knowing the general principles of organic chemistry and how molecules come together and whatnot, and the general principles of electronegativity. And just like a current, it's always the negative charges that move, the electrons that move. And so that's the general principle. And when I knew the general principle, that's when on tests, A+, right? Because I knew the general principle, and that I could just solve any problem, if you want, that was there. And so we come here to the gospel today. I think this is the case of the Pharisees. They had memorized the law, right? They had memorized the law to the letter, everything about the law, even to the point of pointing out to Jesus' disciples that they were picking grain from the grain fields and they weren't supposed to be doing that on a Sabbath. And so very nitpicky, very minute details of the law. But what happened is that in doing so, they kind of lost sight of the kind of general principle behind the law, what it is all about, right? That's what they had lost sight of. And Jesus reminds us of the general principle at the end of the day when it comes to all the laws and the commandments. He says, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice." That's the general principle behind all of the laws and the commandments, is this mercy, right? And so this is all over the scriptures. In Matthew's gospel, for example, we would have read this near the time of the when we were reading the Sermon on the Mount a few weeks ago. If you remember that you, when you come to the altar to offer your sacrifice, and you remember that you have something against your brother or sister, leave your gift at the base of the altar, go away and reconcile with your brother or sister, and then come back to offer your gift. And so it's always mercy first. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. We have in this first reading today here this beautiful account of the Passover, this freedom that the Lord wants to give his followers, that the Lord wants to give to his people. And there's a lot of ritual, there's a lot of rules and regulations when it comes to what they are to do, with what kind of animal they are to have, and how they are to divide it, and how they are to cook it, and all these things. So it's a big, important ritual. But we have to remember that behind all that is God's desire to set his people free. It's God's desire to give his people mercy, to show his people mercy, to lead them out of slavery of Egypt. And it's the same thing with the Eucharist, which is the fulfillment of the Passover, right? And so it's the same thing. Jesus, in this case, wants to free us from the slavery to sin, the slavery that is to death. He wants to show us his love and his mercy by the Eucharist. And so this is really, and so when we understand kind of the real general principle, that's when we can apply it to know, what are the rituals and the regulations and whatnot. But they all flow from that central principle. Now, there's a beautiful image from the Psalms, actually, because it struck me because we mentioned Moses and Aaron, and so it's a beautiful image of Aaron, like oil running off the beard of Aaron. That's a beautiful image of what mercy ought to do in our life, right? So we have like oil running through the beard of Aaron, running off the beard of Aaron. So mercy is so abundant. God gives us his mercy in abundance, like this abundance of oil running off the beard. Some of it gets absorbed into the beard, right, and whatnot, but most of it doesn't. Most of it just kind of runs off and is meant to be shared. And so when we understand that general principle, when we understand that, that's when we can understand the why behind the commandments.